Build a polished wardrobe that shows you stay you wherever you go with Mack Weldon. Use code MAC25 for 25% off your first order of $125 or more at MackWeldon.com.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And warmer from below, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Eeps with myself, Greg Eeps Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in a few minutes by Nate Hornung. You know him better as Shaggy_Bets over on Your Betting News. He does a tremendous job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. We're going to be discussing with them what we've all been seeing here in this college basketball offseason. We're going to be discussing some of the teams that he's feeling bullish/bearish on. We're going to be diving in on some of these D2 guys going up to the D1 ranks, because with these D2 guys, Nate is a graduate of a Division II school as well. We have noticed a lot of success there. So we're going to be looking at different angles for teams that he's looking to /fade towards the beginning part of the season, and we're going to have a lot of fun chatting with him, as it's going to be a two-part chat. We really didn't see a lot of news and notes that happened in college basketball this weekend, so we're going to have some fun there. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you, for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM. Name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While we did not get in any Twitter /X questions, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. Over to EdgeBoost, they're making sure that bettors are able to access the funds that they so badly want to all day, every day. When you go to EdgeBoost.bet, type in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a $1 for $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. And how about if we do dive in with our good friend Shaggy Bets, aka Nate? You're able to follow him on Twitter /X at Shaggy_Bets. And it's great to be able to get you aboard today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me, Nate. And Nate, it has been just an incredible offseason we've seen in college basketball, with north of 2,500 guys entering in the transfer portal. And just how have you been trying to decipher everything? Because I feel like college basketball is becoming more and more of a year-round sport and a year-round just labor of love to be able to follow it, because it used to be like 10 years ago, you could just pretty much know what you were getting from when the nets were cut down until the start of the season. Now there's just so many moving parts, and there's so many things that we need to be, shall we say, paying our attention to.
Oh, absolutely. I'm with you. I'm just trying to keep up with all the moves, because you said it. There have been players going all over the country, switching teams, and just with the nature of NIL and the transfer portal now, that's going to be what these off seasons are. They're going to be much more exciting, and people who love capping college basketball, they're going to have to pay attention to these off months to figure out what's going on when the season starts in November.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think that it was really interesting what we saw in the draft decisions over the last few weeks as well, because with a lot of the NBA draft decisions, it used to be like 5 or 6 years ago that all these guys that were even like fringe second round picks, they all went in the NBA. But we saw so many guys coming back to school, and I think that this is, for one, good for college basketball in general, and two, it's going to make for a much more competitive and a much more just good product for this upcoming season.
Oh, absolutely. I love seeing the veterans come back, the guys that have been on the roster, been with the same coach for multiple years, coming back and leading some of those younger freshmen, or maybe the new guys that come over in the portal, using that experience and that leadership that's already there to propel them to the next level.
No doubt about it. And I do want to dive in on a few specific teams, because I think that one team that really benefited from everything that we saw here in the offseason was Florida, because we were unsure of what this team was going to be looking like with Walter Clayton being out of the fold, losing some of those guys from that title run, but they're able to retain so much of that front court with Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu, and then they get Boogie Fland, who he was in the NBA draft and decided not to go back to Arkansas. And I feel like this is a team that maybe they're not going to be number one in the preseason polls, because it's hard to be able to compete with Purdue, but I think that this is at minimum a top 5, top 6 team going in.
Oh, I 100% agree. Todd Golden has completely reloaded. He lost lost that trio of guards in Clayton, Richard, and Elijah Martin, but he reloaded. He got Boogie Flant from Arkansas. He got Xavier Lee from Princeton, A.J. Brown coming over from Ohio. And then you mentioned all those front court guys returning. This Gator team is dangerous. They're ready to go. Like you said, might not be preseason number one, but they should be a national championship contender once again.
Yep, I'm right there with you, and I think that they're going to be in for busting out in general in an SEC that I don't think that we're going to get as many bids into the NCAA tournament as we did out of the SEC, but again, I feel like these teams have just been able to really step up, allocate so much of that football money to college basketball, and I think that's paid off with the way that they've just done such a great job in terms of coaching hires as well, because when I look at college basketball, it really sets the SEC apart from everyone else. Obviously, these teams are spending quite a bit of money, but along with that spending comes really the best coaches in the cycle darn near every single year.
Absolutely. SEC is obviously a powerhouse in football, but they're definitely going to be one in basketball this season as well. Just as deep as that conference is, I believe 10 bids, maybe 11 bids last year. It's loaded from top to bottom. It's fun basketball down there.
Oh, no question about it. And I do think that while the SEC has had a good offseason, I'm not sure how you look at the conferences in general. I would say actually the Big Ten has probably had the best offseason because with Michigan, the fact that they were able to get Yaxel Lendeborg, it looked like he was as good as gone to the NBA. That's big. And just the coaching hires in general. I mentioned how the SEC has set themselves apart with their coaches. Bringing in Nico Medved over at Minnesota was tremendous for that program. And then obviously you're going to be getting DeVries squared over at Indiana for Iowa. The fact that they bring in Ben McCollum, who had so much success at the D2 ranks in Drake. I think that all those hires are home runs and really elevate this conference.
Oh, 100%. I love that you bring up the Ben McCollum hire because I've got a soft spot for him and Bennett Sturts, actually. They played at Northwest Missouri State, is actually in the same conference as my alma mater. So I got to watch him at that D2 level tear us apart year after year, win national championships with them, and then to see them elevate to the mid-major ball of Drake and have such success there, playing their style of basketball. They didn't change. They didn't necessarily adapt. They played defense, played slow basketball like Ben McCollum likes to play, and now we get to see that in these high major conferences as they go to the Big Ten next year.
Absolutely, as we've got Nate Hornung, you know him better as Shaggy Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And how do you take a look at some of these teams with a first-year head coach and just a little bit of a new look in general? Because with Iowa, certainly we're not going to be seeing the same tempo as Iowa's played in the past. This is about as different as you could get with Iowa, and I think that's just really interesting to gauge because a lot of the players that come over from Drake are going to be with Ben McCollum, but I'm curious to see if he stays true to himself and is going to be dead last in terms of total possessions per game, or if we see something similar when you saw Grant McCaslin go on over to Texas Tech, where his team was pretty much last in the country in terms of total possessions per game over at North Texas, but he changed that style a little bit when he went to Texas Tech, and it's bared very fruitful for him thus far.
Definitely. I like to think that McCollum will keep that same style. I think that really benefited them kind of being that underdog, that lower power, that slowing down the tempo, really making those possessions matter more. I think that really gave them success, in the NCAA tournament when they beat Missouri, took them out of their comfort zone, really slowed that game down. I think Ben McCollum kind of sticks with that and brings that to the Hawkeyes.
Yep, no question about it, and I do think that that is going to be massive to take a look at moving forward in a Big Ten where I feel like it's just a conference that, for lack of a better term, has really gotten with the times as well. Because for the Big Ten, there was just a long time where these teams were so stubborn and not wanting to go into the transfer portal. They wanted to just try to pretend like it was still the 1980s, where it was 4 years, develop these guys, but they realized that they were getting, shall we say, ravaged by the transfer portal. And I think that it's just been a very big last 2 seasons for the Big Ten in general to get with the times and really start to allocate those resources in order to bring in some top flight transfers and to really elevate this conference.
Absolutely. You mentioned Michigan Wolverines earlier, and Dusty May has done a great job bringing in Merez Johnson Jr. from Illinois, an in-conference transfer there. He's got Elliot Cadeau ready to run the point guard for him as well. The whole conference as a whole, I think, has stepped up and really adapted with the times, kind of like you alluded to.
No question, as I think that is going to be really interesting to look at. And obviously, when it comes to Big Ten, I think that Purdue is that team to beat because you bring back so much of that backcourt, Fletcher Lawyer, you're able to bring in Oscar Clough, who is leading the country in rebounding. So I ain't no doubt about it. They're looking very good. But how do you take a look at the rest of the Big Ten? Because who we just mentioned in Michigan, I think that they're a solid number 2. But then I take a look at teams like UCLA and company like that. I even like what Washington has been able to do as well. I think that after those top 2 teams, there's a really nice middle and a lot of really rock solid teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Those top 2, like you mentioned, Purdue and Michigan, I think they're going to kind of run away with the conference. But that meat in the middle it's going to be up for grabs. And, I kind of like what Eric Musselman and USC are doing out there. He got a couple of key transfers in Chad Baker-Mazara and Rodney Rice from Maryland. If Musselman can keep Baker-Mazara's head on straight, I think he can get a lot of productivity out of him. Obviously, that guy is kind of a firecracker on the court, but I think Musselman's coaching style and flavor, I think it really does a great job. It's a good pairing, and I think he'll be able to get the most out of that guy.
Yep, I do think so as well. And I think that Rodney Rice coming on over to USC as well, very rock solid. Gabe Dines, he's 7'3" big man from Youngstown State. That's very rock solid as well. And I do have to go back to something that you were saying a few minutes ago. We were talking about Ben McCollum and how you were watching those guys over at Northwest Missouri State. I do have to ask you which Division II school you went to, since I am a UW-Oshkosh graduate.
Oh, we love that. Love the D2s around here. I'm actually a proud alumni of Emporia State, the Emporia State Hornets in Emporia, Kansas.
And we actually saw their coach go on over to Houston Christian and have a really nice year as well. So I'm so glad that you bring that up, because we have been seeing some of these teams have a little bit of a tempo change, because Houston Christian might be exactly what Iowa is this year. They were always playing up, down, all around with Ron Cottrell. Craig Doty comes over from Emporia State, completely changes the culture there. And I think that these are some of the teams that could be able to be some of the most profitable teams, where you have a team that's deciding to zag after they had zig for so long, like Cal Poly went from super slow to super fast, with Mike DeGeorge coming on over from the D2 ranks as well. I think that these are such big things to be able to take advantage of, because I don't think that the bookmakers, even though they're going to adjust their totals obviously on Iowa, I don't know if they're going to be able to go far enough.
Well, exactly. They're playing a guessing game just like us. They've got no clue what to do. And I love that you bring up Craig Doty, because he's just a stand-up guy, Coach Doty is. And yeah, what he did coming from Graceland, winning a national championship there, completely turned Emporia State's basketball program around, and then elevating up to the D1 level at Houston Christian. A great success story to watch him go, and he's panned out very well.
I absolutely love the topic that we've got right now, talking about some of these D2 guys going on up to the D1 ranks. I think that it's worth mentioning a little bit more on the flip side with our man Nate. You know him a little bit better as Shaggy Betts. And on top of that, I'll get a little bit of a thought as to some of the teams that he's bull/bearish on, and some of the things that he's taking a look at for this upcoming season. We'll talk about that with Nate on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beats and Family Podcast.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Heaps with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, being rejoined by Nate Hornung. He does a tremendous job over at Your Betting News. You're able to know him a little bit better as Shaggy Betts, as he is on the old Twitter/X at his handle of Shaggy_Betts. And we left off by talking a little bit about your alma mater in Emporia State, and the fact that we did see Craig Doty go on over to Houston Christian and was really able to excel. But how about if we do talk about the success that some of these D2 guys have had? And this is something I talked about on the podcast about 24 hours ago with Rocco Miller, but because obviously you've got some inroads there. I'm a former D3 guy myself, and I really think that these teams over the last few years, you look at what Cal Poly was able to do. I mean, Houston Christian was one of the most profitable teams in all of college basketball last season. I feel like these mid-major teams that take a swing on these D2 guys have been more often than not very much rewarded.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And, it is a different level of basketball, no doubt about it, obviously. But a lot of these D2 D2 guys, they can play, and maybe they didn't quite go D1 right from the jump for playing time or coaching issues, whatever it may be, but they've got the talent, they've got the heart, and once they get that shot at that next level, they're ready to explode.
No question about it, as we do have Nate Hornung, I'm better at Shaggy Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and I do think that that's a big dynamic to be taking a look at here in the offseason, these D2 coaches coming on up, because I do think that there's going to be a lot of profitability there, but are there some other characteristics of teams that you take a look at and you either like/dislike with them coming into the season, with the way that they utilize the transfer portal, coaching hires, what have you? Is there just anything that really does stand out to you in terms of teams that you'd like to /fade towards the beginning part of the season?
Yeah, there's actually one specific player that, I'll be honest, I don't know if I'm looking to fade him or back him this year. I'm just looking to see how it pans out. It's PJ Haggerty coming from the Memphis Tigers over to the Kansas State Wildcats. Have to give a little shout out to Kansas State here in Manhappiness, Kansas, not too far from me. But Jerome Tang, he took a shot on the portal last year with Coleman Hawkins. They spent a lot of money on Coleman Hawkins, about $2 million, I believe. And he really didn't pan out like they thought he was. They brought him in to be the guy, and he really couldn't do it for that team. Now they went and spent $4 million on PJ Haggerty to come in and be that guy again. Haggerty in his fourth school in 4 years, he's averaged 21 straight points over the last 2 seasons. He's led both rosters in scoring that he's represented. I think he's got a good shot to be the guy at Kansas State. It'll just be a matter of if Jerome Tang can keep him motivated and keep the pieces around him ready to go.
Yep, I think that is going to be so key, and I am a little bit concerned about Kansas State because they obviously bust through for that Elite Eight run year number 1 in the last 2 years. It's just been a little bit of a fizzle in general, and how much do you take a look at some of these programs and just wonder if it was perhaps a one-year wonder or if there were just some, shall we say, interesting situations with it. Like, I felt like Missouri under Dennis Gates, really good example of this. Make the NCAA tournament year number 1, winless in the SEC year number 2, back to the NCAA tournament last year. And I think that gauging some of these coaches early on can be some of the most difficult things to do.
Oh, absolutely. And we kind of saw that a couple years ago with FAU, with their incredible Final Four run, and then they just laid a stinker in the tournament the next year, having all those same pieces, having Dusty May still, and obviously eventually he moved on to Michigan. But I think that K-State run might have been a bit of an outlier, but I really do like Jerome Tang. I think he's a great guy, great for the program, and he's really turning things around there in Manhattan.
No question about it. And I do think that moving forward, we're going to be having a lot of these coaches just be very intriguing in general because these coaches are under the gun a little bit more, as nobody other than Tobin Anderson, who got relieved of his duties at Iona after 2 years. So I think that is something to be very mindful of in this day and age of college basketball. And what else I think is very intriguing, and I was talking quite a bit about this yesterday on the podcast too, some of these NBA guys, they're going to be coming in and coaching college basketball as well. Some of them are former players like Mike Bibby. We're going to be seeing that with Charlie Ward. Some of these guys like Iona, for example, they decided to invest in a former NBA guy. Heck, Zach Chu was a part of the Indiana Pacers staff over the last few years as well. And I think that these are some of the more interesting guys and some of the more hard ones to gauge because we saw the success of BYU a season ago, but we've also seen some guys go from NBA to college and just really lay an egg.
Right. It's absolutely a different sport. It's totally a different league. And I'm wondering if a lot of that has to do with the time commitment that recruiting plays a role, especially with now the NIL and now transfer portal. Recruiting's a full season, full year job. It's not just a couple months out of the off season. So I think that's probably a big jump for these NBA guys trying to come back down to the college level. Is recruiting is just a nightmare and a full-time job in itself. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it certainly is. Man, I mean, when you're at these mid-major programs as well, you have fewer handlers to be able to help you out as well. Now, I will say it helps when Shaquille O'Neal is your general manager if you're Mike Bibby. So that has been absolutely tremendous. And that is one of those teams I think is going to be very interesting for this upcoming season. I just don't know what to expect out of Sacramento State. But when you've got Shaquille O'Neal and Mike Bibby in your program, you know what? I do think that good things might be coming. But we're a few teams in general that you're just a little bit jury's out on, because I know you were talking about Kansas State a little bit before, but are there a few teams in general where you just don't know what to expect, and there are teams that you just want to see perhaps their first game of the season before you decide, all right, I'm either in or out on them?
I definitely want to watch the Kentucky Wildcats for a few games. Mark Pope, he kind of reloaded in the portal. He got Denzel Aberdeen from Florida, an in-conference transfer, got Muhammad Diabate from Alabama as well, and then Jalen Lowe from Pittsburgh. I think it might take a little bit for all of those guys to gel. Mark Pope obviously hopped into Kentucky, had a great season right away as a first-year head coach, got that year of experience under his belt, but coaching at the SEC level, it's tough. So I want to see those guys specifically gel a little bit before I start backing them heavily.
Yep, I think that is so well said. And when it comes to just what we've got in general with that Kentucky program, certainly one that was able to bring in Jaden Quantins to be able to help out down low. I think that that's going to be able to help them out a little bit. And I think that just in general, gauging these year two coaches can be a little bit of a challenge as well, because I mentioned it a little bit before in passing with Missouri going for the NCAA tournament to winless. We mentioned it with Kansas State as well. And it does feel like that could be some of the hardest things to do, because in year number one, you can tell that these guys are trying to put their stamp on the program and everything like that. But sometimes it's year number two where the volatility actually really starts.
Oh, definitely. And like you said, it might have been an outlier year for Mark Pope having a good year with the Wildcats in the first year. Maybe he comes a little bit back down to earth here. I think there's going to be some success for the Wildcats this season. Mark Pope, I think he's got his head on straight. I think he's a great leader for that program.
Yeah, but I think that they could go from year number one to year number two and be able to elevate, much like I think with Michigan, they can as well, because they just really needed a point guard to be able to help them out. Elliot Kadu was big for them. I mentioned Quantins to be able to help out down low with Kentucky. I think that that is going to be massive for them as well. And then I know that you were talking about just how you were very excited to see Drake last year and everything like that. Is there perhaps one or two mid-majors they think could be able to bust out this year too? Because certainly Drake was the big bust out team last year. We saw what they were able to do, and year in and year out, we always have a few teams that are able to surprise. Is there one or two that you have your eye on? You think that they've had a good offseason and perhaps they are going to be able to elevate this year?
I'll admit it might be a little too early for me to give you a straight answer there, but I will say I have a soft spot for the Big Sky Conference. I was a big Idaho State guy last year, the Idaho State Bengals led by Dylan Darling. I loved the Montana State Bobcats in years prior as well. I'm probably be looking for a Big Sky team to kind of surprise some people and compete on that next level.
Idaho actually has a lot of minutes returning, and I'm actually going to be doing my Big Sky Conference preview podcast within the next 48 or so hours. So I've actually done a lot of deep diving with regards to that conference. It's not necessarily looking the same as it has in past years, because with the Weber State Wildcats, it's very interesting. Obviously, Eastern Washington took a massive step back, but Idaho State was such an interesting team last year. I've always loved the Northern Arizona Lumberjacks. They were a good rebounding team as well. And I did mention in passing what you're able to get out of Sacramento State as well. And that might be one of the most volatile teams in the country, because with Sacramento State, you bring in someone like a Mikey Williams. As I mentioned, you got Mike Bibby and Shaquille O'Neal in the fold for them as well. But how are these guys going to mesh? And can Mike Bibby actually coach? I think is a very big question.
Absolutely. We don't know. It's going to be a whole new ball game for him. So he's going to have to get those guys focused and running towards the same goal.
Yep, they certainly are going to need to, but a man that is focused and is having a goal of making you money, that'd be you, Nate. I know that you're doing a tremendous job over at Your Betting News. You're doing a great job with one of my good other friends, Kobe Marcio, over there as well. So a lot of good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on all socials at Shaggy_bets. I'm on Twitter. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. If you like golf, I've been putting out some more golf content of myself golfing, actually. It's not very good, I'll admit it, but it's entertaining for some, hopefully. So you can find me on all socials at Shaggy_bets and check me out at bettingnews.com.
Well, you know what? It's probably better than mine. I am not someone that owns like any sort of a pair of golf clubs or anything like that. I'd be a complete and utter disaster out there on the link. So you know what? I can appreciate that, and I can appreciate a man that wants to talk some college basketball in June, because Nate, aka Shaggy Bets, he's doing an absolutely tremendous job looking at this sport that we all know and love, and it was great to be able to get him aboard today. So big thanks to our good friend Shaggy Bets for joining me right here on Cusco Seeps, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Cusco Seeps, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters the name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And was great to be able to get our good friend Nate on today, and we're going to be getting you guys some more conference previews within the next few days. We're getting set for the upcoming college basketball season. I did allude to it. I'm going to be doing my Big Sky Conference preview relatively soon as well, so we're going to be looking at that and so much more on this podcast, and I'm with you guys every single day, regular season and off season, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.